I'm
Rawr!
angry about cats.
When did we all get this dumb? Almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear warfare. I don't see any bodies, so it doesn't count.
I'm angry about cats.
I'm the chef. I want to hear one thing. Yes, chef. Come on, man. Use your brain. The Why I'm Angry podcast starts now. All right, the Why I'm Angry podcast, hiding behind the logo here. So, or not at all. All right. So, this is Chef. And remember, follow, like, and share. Get your merch. Why I'm Angry podcast or whyimangry.com webpage. Get on there. Get some merch. Get into our comments now. If you get into our comments, I'll be watching them. Try to comment back. Try to comment on what's going on and stuff. Get in on the conversation. Working on getting organized here a little bit. Wife was having a little bit of a bad day, so I went to get cookies. And that took about 25 minutes of my prep time. So I have already prepped. But I need to get just my stuff organized in. Give me just a half a second here to jump back off. I need to shut down some electronics in here that are giving some feedback, and then I'll be back in half a second. All right, told you, just half a second here, getting some organized. If I had another cookie, I'd be eating it, but I don't. They were good. So let me get these moved over. My articles moved over. All right, that was it. I thought I had one more. Okay, maybe not. All right. All right, it's the Why I'm Angry podcast. Today we're going to talk about what's going on, and then I've got a couple of nostalgia pieces, couple funny pieces. And get into it. So if you got anything you want to talk about, obviously get on our comments. Last week we kind of we got into the comments a little bit. We even got Honest Abe in the comments and got him onto the show again. So that was fun. We did the talk about conspiracy theories, which is always a fun and good one. Gets everyone kind of talking and laughing and realizing that we're all just a little bit crazy. So this morning's headlines, Ariane 6 blasted off. The European Space Agency's next generation Ariane 6 rocket lifted off for the first time. Oh, that was the other article. Sorry. The Ariane 6 rocket blasted off yesterday from French Guiana, a French territory in northeastern South America. It's kind of been a long-awaited launch. They had it set up for 2020. I don't know if you remember, there was a little hiccup with a pandemic, and for some reason they stopped doing things. And now it's 2024, 4 years later, and they're finally picking things back up. So, also faced issues with the Russia-Ukrainian war. This 200-foot rocket is the new version. It's Ariane 62 and Ariane 64. Both succeed Ariane 5, which retired a year ago. The Ariane 5 rocket had exploded minutes into its inaugural flight in 96, and then it did 112 out of 117 successful launches. Not bad. If it's a baseball player, he's going to the Hall of Fame. So they've got 30 missions lined up, and it is including 18 to help build out Amazon's new Kuiper satellite internet constellation. So just a little, I guess they were using SpaceX before, and they've been having to use that for the last couple of years, trying to keep things going for themselves. But now that they've got these rockets successful, they did say that they got most of the stuff up that they were working on the last phase of the rocket launch. I guess there was some kind of error, and so they had to disband some launches in the last phase. So, excuse me. So it is a $4.5 billion rocket, and it carried a variety of satellites and experiments up into space for them. This is one I was thinking. I was looking at, and I kind of want to know you guys' comments on it. So if you're listening on the podcast, shoot us comments at whyimangrypodcast@gmail.com. And if you're on Facebook or Rumble or Twitch or any of those places right now, shoot us comments, and we'll just saying here, and we'll see those comments. We'll be able to kind of give you a little bit of time on the live podcast. So, but this one anyhow is Athletic Brewing Grows. So I don't know if you've heard of Athletic Brewing. They're an upstart non-alcoholic beer producer. That's right, non-alcoholic beer. I'm one of those people who aren't a great or giant beer drinker. Once in a while, I'll drink a beer, and that's mainly because it's just if it's a hot day, or you get some wings or something like that, and obviously I have no problems with alcoholism, so I don't have to worry about getting anything like that. Also, I don't have to I'm not into getting super drunk, smashed, or anything like that, and just wasting a night or not knowing exactly what I'm doing for that evening. So, but this Athletic Brewing Company, they raised $50 million in equity financing this week, doubling its overall value in just 2 years to $80 million. The company is led by former hedge fund trader Bill Shufelt. He has been credited with catalyzing a boom in non-alcoholic beer options since its brightly colored cans hit the stores in 2018. So this starts to beg the question, is there a market? Is this a market for people who have had issues with alcoholism before, or is this more of for people who actually like beer, and really and want an alternative when they can't drink alcohol? So, like, you just really like to drink beer and you're out in public, you can't, you got to go home. Maybe you drink 2 or 3 beers, and an hour or two later, you want another one. And so instead of drinking an alcoholic beer, you drink a non-alcoholic beer and get yourself home safe. In that option, I guess that's probably a good option. It also might be a good option if you're at a bar, you get too drunk, and you want to continue to drink, and the bartender cuts you off. That seems like it might be a good option for something like that. But they're actually saying that they produce. It's got the most comparable taste to alcoholic beers on the market. And they basically marketing it towards customers with an active lifestyle as an additional option to alcohol, not a substitute. So they're basically saying that maybe, like I said, maybe you don't want to drink that night, and so you drink. Well, no, that would be a substitute. So they're just saying maybe you like the flavor of beer and you just want to drink a non-alcoholic beer. But they said in 2022 there was roughly 2% of the beer sales was non-alcoholic beers, and now they're saying that roughly 30% in the recent year here. Yeah, so they're saying that the market is now roughly 30% for non-alcoholic beers. Athletic success mirrors a broader shift. The overall consensus in the beer market is that Gen Z reportedly drinks 20% less than other generations at their age, and that overall beer sales are declining. Maybe because they're health conscious, maybe because they have more options on the alcoholic market. I mean, if you think about it, 10 years ago, the alcoholic market was, beer, and then, you had, maybe a rum, a tequila, just a few options. Now, if you go to a liquor store, you've got all of your local options, which are anymore pretty prevalent. You may have 10 or 20 options depending on what area you're in. And so, but then, you've got 5 or 10 or 20 beer options also from the local market. And then, beyond that, you've got all of your domestics and all of your, your imports and things like that. So I think that the market is starting to thin out, and you can see how fast, when Budweiser or Bud Light had their issue with being kind of woke, that how fast the market thinned on them, and how fast they went from being the top rated beer to other beers coming in, Dos Equis and things like that, or could jump in and kind of take over. So I think this is an interesting deal. I think obviously that it can be an option for those who, like I said, maybe they don't drink anymore. Maybe they've gotten away from it, or they had an issue with it, and you can still be a social drinker. And you can drink, non-alcoholic beers or whatever, or, towards the end of the night, maybe this saves you from drinking more beers when you may grab some wings at the end of the night or a burrito or something, and you can drink something like this, and it still gives you that feeling, that flavor. I mean, sometimes that feeling, that it's more of a nostalgia feeling than it is really I have to have a beer. Um, so I think that this is something. This is a market that's interesting to see it growing. Plus, it's interesting to see that Gen Z adults reportedly drink 20% less, um, and they're chalking it up to being health conscious. So that's kind of an interesting twist on things. Also, I don't know how. I mean, I guess I don't know whether alcohol is. I mean, yes, it's not super 100% healthy. It is considered a poison that you're putting in your body. At the same time, if you're putting a non-alcoholic beer, are you still getting all of the same calories? Are you getting the same type of thing? You're just not getting the alcohol. Um, and so is it still healthy? Or just there's no drug involved or poison involved in your system. So yeah. Man, I got something in my throat this evening. Um, in if you've been watching the UEFA European Champion, the Euros, England is going to take on Spain. England had a pretty crazy one today against the Netherlands. Ended up 2-1. They scored the final goal, the second goal, in the 90th minute, so just right at the end. So that was pretty exciting. That most of the soccer this week, I say soccer, but football, whatever. Over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, other than the U.S. losing stupidly, has been pretty tight games, pretty good games. Even the Argentina, the South American um, Cup and stuff. So good games to watch, and I think that is on Monday. Champion finals. Finals are Tuesday. I'm gonna have to Google it. So the Euros final is on Sunday. Sunday the 14th. So this Sunday at 3 p.m. on a channel that does not sponsor us. So let me look through another one here. There's missile strikes in Ukraine this week. Killed more than 100, wounded across Ukraine after a Russian missile barrage hit multiple targets. Ukraine's air defense shot down 30 of the 38 missiles. So 8 missiles killed 100 people or wounded 100 people. 36 people were killed, 100 people were wounded. So that's pretty good shooting from Russia. 50 civilian buildings. I don't know why they're not getting all in a huff in Washington about the whole civilians being killed here. Just I don't know if you've been watching this, but Alec Baldwin is facing a trial for the shooting of one of the cinematographers on one of his on his movie Rust, on the set of Rust. Helena Hutchins was killed by gunfire, and a grand jury was convened to figure out whether he could be brought up on charges of involuntary manslaughter. And they said yes, he could. So the prop gun he was handling discharged a live round, killing Hutchins, and injuring the director Joel Souza. Baldwin maintains that he did not pull the trigger and has pleaded not guilty. This is a rough one because he wasn't in charge of the weapon, like to put the ammo in. So for him to be in charge, you almost have to get you almost have to establish a level of conspiracy where he knew what was going on, that there was live ammo, or that there was, that they were. And I know on some movie sets they fire live ammo into like the prop area, into the proper areas, so that they get the sound effects, so that they get more of an effect of the gun going off and things. Especially when it's outdoors, or when the gun is being fired in an outdoor, or they can, where they can disguise their range to look like the set that they're trying to look at, or trying to film. But I also know that 90% of the rounds that they put through are going to be, dummy rounds. They're going to be, blanks, or they're going to be, starter, charge rounds. And so it's tough when he wasn't in charge of the gun, which anytime you pick up a gun, obviously I know the gun safety rules. On a set, the rules are a little different. Kind of. I mean, you still want to make sure that it's a live gun, blah, blah, blah. He maintains that he didn't even pull the trigger, that the gun just went off, which is hard to think that a gun would go off, other than it's a prop gun and it's made to go off, or it's made to be fired easily, or made to we don't know what was done to that gun as a kind of thing, as what customizations were done to that gun so that it did what it was supposed to do for the movie and for the purposes of the movie. So, just a really actually unfortunate situation. The person who was in charge, the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, was already sentenced in April to 18 months in prison for her role in the incident. The defense recently failed to have the case dismissed, citing damage to the gun during forensic testing. So they're trying to say that the gun, isn't the same gun today because it's been damaged and stuff like that while they were trying to make it fire again without being fired, without being the trigger pulled. They say that the case is going to last about 10 days. I don't know. But it's just an interesting circumstance that we're kind of seeing this as it's 4 years old, and the weapon went off, whether by pulling the trigger or whether not. But if you're going to say that, is, especially if you're going to say it's murder, but even with an involuntary manslaughter, why would he have shot this person? And why, the negligence in it, you have to prove some sort of negligence. Like he was pointing at him recklessly, or, he was going, oh, bang, bang, or something like that. And, all of a sudden fired it, or they got in an argument, or, there's otherwise, to me, it sounds like it was a bad incident, and they, wrong place at the wrong time. And I don't know. It just, if there was any shred of he meant to do it, then by all means, run him through it. But if this is just, I was handed the gun, it was part of the props, it went off, there was an accident. I mean, sometimes there's just accidents. And as much as, as a family member or as friends or whatever, you want justice, sometimes there's just an accident, needless or otherwise. So, I kept seeing this meme pop up, and to me, I thought it looked funny, but I wanted to see if it was recent or if it was just all of a sudden I started seeing this meme pop up, and the meme was, missing woman finds herself after joining her own search party. So I did look it up, and it was kind of funny. I was like, "Oh, this is hilarious. This is, think about how this lady, all of a sudden she's out there yelling her own name, thinking, man, there's another woman named Jenny or whatever her name was, out there." And so I looked it up, and it is from 2012, but I thought it was still funny enough to bring it back and all that. So a woman on a bus tour was reportedly missing by her bus, by the bus driver at Iceland's Eldja Eld Eldga Ja I don't know. Anyway, Eldja Canyon. According to Time magazine at the time, with the driver describing the missing woman as 160 centimeters, Asian, and wearing dark clothing. A Coast Guard helicopter was assigned to help search the area, but became delayed, prompting the tour group to look for her on foot. About 50 people joined the search, including the woman herself. According to the clipping, the woman had changed her clothes and didn't recognize this description of herself. So the search was so she was out there just searching away for herself, just out there, just looking for a woman with the same clothes that she had on before that earlier in the day. And they said about 3 a.m. they called the search off, when it became clear that the missing woman was in fact accounted for and searching for herself. Twitter user Brian Miller posted a photo of the clipping on Twitter at that time. He's attracted about 275,000 likes back in 2012. as he retweets, about 73,000 retweets. So he said, "Aren't we all on our way?" This woman, Miller, captioned the tweet. "Oh, aren't we all in our own way?" This woman, looking for ourselves, as everyone else is looking for us also. It just seemed like an interesting story. He said also in there, "I'm jealous of this woman's answer to every future team building exercise where she has to tell the group something interesting about herself. Uh, I'm so glad I'm so glad she found herself. I might have to go to Iceland now," another wrote, adding, "There might be a tourism opportunity in this story. Finding yourself in Iceland." Some were puzzled as to why the driver was unable to count how many tourists were on their bus. And he goes, "Oh, I get it. There's 10 people in the tour group. After their trip, there was only 10 people. Oh, someone must be missing." So, mathematical genius. They were not equipped, and not another equipped. But so basically, yeah, they went on a trip. Guy had 10 or 15 people. They got a bunch of other people together. I don't know why he didn't just count heads. He just didn't see the same lady with the same colored outfit on or something like that. I don't want to be like, all this guy sees was Asians, you know, but it's easy. You only see the person for a short time. They walk by you to get on their seat. They walk by you to get out of their seat. To go on the tour, and they go do their thing. You're not just hanging out. It's not like he was dating her or anything. So, but yeah, it'd be interesting to to be on your own search party going out. You're out there looking for this woman, and you're like, wait, I'm not 160 centimeters. I'm not. I'm not 80 pound, 180 pounds. I'm only 150 pounds. So just one I kept seeing for some reason. It just popped up. The algorithms were getting me this week, and there it was. So I figured I'd pass it along. We'd all have a good laugh and keep on going. So I did see um, also a little clip. I'm gonna pause here for a second and remind you guys. This is this podcast is funded by us. We're looking for help in the funding, so if you can get on and help us out, shoot us a little help on our website at whyimangry.com. We have subscriptions. We have you know email blasts that we send out. You can get ad free podcasts and all of that good stuff. So jump on there, help us out a little bit. It also is free to follow, like, and share us. So if you can help us out with that, get us out to all your friends. If you enjoy the podcast, then they'll probably enjoy it also. So help us out. So I did see one thing, and this was kind of funny. Thought I'd go over it. It's a little mine was a little different, and I know being that it's football, that was kind of I'm sure this is from the UK, but this is the football rules when we were kids, and I'm going to go over what they said and then kind of how it was different for us. So, football rules number 1, the fatty was always the goalkeeper. And that's pretty true. Either that or the person who's injured or the person who the smallest kid on the field a lot of times was the goalkeeper, somebody that couldn't run as fast as everybody else. And then the game ended when everyone was tired. the game didn't end when everybody was tired. The game ended when the streetlights came on and your mom started yelling, "Come home." That was when the game ended. If you were tired, you either sat off to the side or you played defense, or you got back to the back. And that was with any game. If it was football or it was real football, it was US football or baseball or anything like that. If it was baseball, you played out in the outfield. You if it was, anything else, we kept playing until the lights came on and you were sent home. So even if the score was 20-0, whoever scored the last one won. Most of the time, we were having to say that so that the other team would continue to play. Number 4, there was no referee, which was true. There was never ever a referee. It was, if you got hurt, it was a foul. Otherwise, it was no foul. You gave it a foul. It was give a foul only when it was when it was very clear, or someone started to cry. That's probably true. It was either crying, you were hurt. 90% of the time, you didn't get a foul unless it was like a real blatant, like you just straight up, kick somebody. And that went for everything. Basketball. I mean, we broke one of my friend's glasses like 3 times. We were playing. His parents ended up getting him like the twistable graphite ones, and we broke them too. There was no such thing as offside. And that's pretty true. I don't think as kids we even knew really what offside was too much. If the owner of the ball got angry, the match was over. That's not even the match was over, but yeah, like if they got angry, they took their ball and went home. That's always the joke. I'm going to take my ball and go home. The 2 best players could never be on the same team, and they knew that too. They also, as in soccer when I was a kid, in some of the circles I was in, I was one of the better kids. We always tried to be on the same team, though. Like, you didn't want to work so hard or play against the other best kid because sometime you wanted to be able to pass the ball to that kid or, that person and not even have to think about it. And that person can score a goal or that person can, we had a couple of kids that, you could throw the ball up to them and they could, they'd score in basketball and stuff. And so you wouldn't have to worry about that. So it was nice to once in a while be able to play on the same team. But yeah, most of the time we weren't allowed to play on the same team. If you were chosen last, you know what being chosen last meant. If you even played 2 to 3 hours in a row, if you even played 2 to 3 hours in a row. Oh, you even played that we talked about it. You played until the lights came on, and then you still tried to play a little longer. It's telling your mom that it was still daytime out and the lights just popped on. The match was stopped when an elderly person passed. Yeah, I mean if they were going through, otherwise we didn't have to stop for that. Neighborhood players were enemies forever. It just depended. If you were in a different if you went to a different school, definitely. But if you were in a different neighborhood, most likely, if you were in the same neighborhood and you played against each other, you were definitely enemies at that time. Those who had no idea about football remained reserves or at maximum defenders. Yeah, I mean you played defender because you didn't have the stamina to run as well. But otherwise, we tried to be pretty inclusive and let everybody play. I mean, I remember a couple games we had 15 or 20 people on the same on each team. When the big ones were playing, you had to leave the field without protesting. Yeah, I mean, we sat off to the side hoping that we would get to play when the high school kids or whatever came on and played. And we just, And once in a great while, we got in. If you know, they didn't have enough players or something like that, we got to play some defense or some outside mid or something like that. But you know, that's how much we love the game, is we just got to, you know, we just sat there and watched even when they were playing. There was always a neighbor who wouldn't let you play and threatened to take your ball and go inside. I mean, we always knew the yard we weren't allowed to play in and stuff. And I mean, I don't know that we ever got threatened that they would take our ball and go in and put it inside. But there was always a yard that we weren't, you know, you tried not to play in, or it seemed like the yard next to the kid's house that had the biggest yard, and we'd end up kicking the ball over there or something. And then you know, you got the fastest kid in the neighborhood to run over there and grab the ball before they noticed. If there was a bet, it was the game was very serious. It was like a final. Yeah, there was almost always a bet though. The goals were 2 rocks or 2 jackets. But there was always a team with a smaller goal. I mean, you always argued that the other team had a smaller goal. When the goalkeeper was pushed, the goal was invalid. Yeah, pretty much. That was kind of the rule. If you hit the goalkeeper, then you pretty much had to go play defense or something like that. This is when the rules were established before the match ever even started. I mean, some, but at the same point, like, the rules were regular soccer rules, and no one actually, because we were so young, no one knew what soccer rules were. And so, you know, one kid said this was the rule, and then the other kid said, no, this is the rule. And one person would say, oh, yeah, that's the rule. And as long as you had a consensus, then that was the rule. If there was a penalty, and if there was a penalty kick, whoever was in goal became your best goalie. You know, whoever was the best player on your team, whoever was the best goalkeeper on your team, ended up in the goal. You pulled whoever you had in the goal, that was taking up space in the goal, and you put the best goalkeeper in. And that was kind of that was a given. That you know, you definitely you know, put the best kid in there. You're not gonna put the tiny kid that you've been sitting there, you know, holding space in the goal for it. So, but yeah, that's so going over. There was a couple that I thought were good. Couple that I thought, you know, definitely, you know, we played until the lights came on. You know, you tried not to make the one, you know, there's always kind of the snobby kid, the kid that, you know, he wasn't better than anyone, but he had more money, or his parents gave him, you know, got him the newest toys or whatever, the newest ball. He was always the one that, you know, that brought the ball, or had had a great ball. And so you wanted to, you let him on the team, and you didn't pick him last so that he didn't get all upset, that he wasn't, you know, you didn't like him that well. But, so I was looking over, some other articles, and one of the ones that popped up, it was kind of one of the you know, the not newsworthy, not big time articles, was that Whoopi Goldberg, which doesn't get much airtime on this show, and probably for good reason, released a comic book this week. And she wrote it 25 years ago about a hero who embraces the powers of menopause. Yep. Let it sink in. Just when you thought that Whoopi Goldberg couldn't become any less notable, any less intelligence, any less relevant. Here she is. She created a comic book. It's co-written by Jamie Paglia, illustrated by Sun Conmi Keenboy, and comic book about menopause. Seems like the next big thing. I mean, I'm gonna race right out tomorrow morning, first thing, to my local comic book store, and if they've got any scruples about them, they're carrying it definitely, and definitely making sure that I get it. I'm gonna read the covers off of that thing. So yeah, during the July 9th episode, which would have been yesterday, of The View, which also doesn't get very much press on our fine channel, the actress and TV personality, 68 years old, announced that her comic book, The Change, is now out. Yeah, she co-wrote it with those other two fine people, and she wrote it because she felt represented in a medium, and she wrote it in a medium that she's always adored. I love comic books, she said. I've always loved comic books since I was a little kid, but none of the comic books seemed to speak to me, so I wrote my own. Is she saying as a child that none of the comic books spoke to her and menopause, so she wrote her own menopause comic book because as a child loving comic books, it didn't speak to her? I mean, that seems much like her. So yeah, it has all the superpowers of menopause. Comic book hero. It is The Change. So, get Whoopi Goldberg's comic book. She is not endorsing us in any way, and even if she did, I'd probably give the money back. But yeah, Whoopi Goldberg's putting out comic books about menopause. I think it is the end of the world. I think we need to take stock in ourselves. Maybe it's time to write your own comic books and forget about these people that are trying to entertain you. It's not even entertaining anymore. It's more, the change follows the journey of Frost, a woman who has spent her life as a wife, mother, grandmother, a life she feels isn't all she had hoped for, with a husband who has grown in another direction. Is she saying this is her life because her husband can't figure out where she's at anymore? With a background in computer science, Isabel is an amazing gamer who plays with people all over the country. The synopsis continues with the help of her comic loving grandson. an irreverent best friend, she must learn to control her abilities and embrace her new identity as the Change, both the life change and her surprising, extraordinary superpowers. Wow. I'm glad that she feels represented now. Is that like that's one thing that I guess I never really put two and two together is that we've talked. People talk all the time about, well, if they feel represented in the media or in movies, or obviously we for a long time we didn't include everyone in the movies, and there was a lack of representation, um for one, for the black industry, the black actors, or the black people in movies and stuff like that, and films. Um, Again, I tend to say that I do say that there is 14 or 15% of the population. So if you have 10 actors on a movie, one and a half of them should be black. Um, so you know it's still, there is a direct correlation in some of that. So again, you've got, you have one and a half black people, you have one Hispanic people, you have a tenth of an Indian person. We get, so we get the representation right. Um, but I do understand that. But when we cut ourselves into a a group, or we block ourselves off as, now she's blocking herself off as a mother, grandmother, menopause going through woman that doesn't feel like she's connected to her husband anymore. He's going in a different direction, or maybe I don't know what her I don't honestly, I haven't followed her in so many years that I don't know whether she's divorced, or a lesbian, or what. But you know when we block ourselves off into a set group, well, we're gonna find that we're misrepresented, because none of us were built the same as the next person over. We're all made different. We all go through our lives in a different way. We all see our lives differently. We all are represented, but we're not going to be perfectly represented. And so we're all going to feel like that that person over there representing us isn't exactly us. So instead of looking for representation, be that representation, be that person that is, out there fighting the good fight. Be the, Whoopi Goldberg's looking for representation. She's on The View every day. Like, like what kind of stupid is that? So, I know that we struggle with, women aren't represented well enough, and this and that. And one thing that's gonna be interesting is, and this will just kind of segue right into it, is U.S. Soccer has gotten rid of their manager, the coach, head coach, and they signed a contract with the players that the players would get equal pay. And in that contract, somewhere in there, one thing is that the U.S. Men's team, because they're all professionals, they're not getting paid. Let's see. I saw that. I'm looking for the article again. Yeah. U.S. men's Olympic soccer team won't be paid at the Paris Games. The union representing the U.S. Soccer men's and women's national teams joined forces 2 years ago on a landmark collective bargaining agreement that guarantees that players on both sides receive the same bonus and prize money for representing their country at the World Cups and other competitions. However, a loophole in the deal means that the U.S. Soccer Federation will not compensate members of the U.S. men's soccer team for participating in next month's Summer Games in Paris. Multiple sources have confirmed American Soccer Now was the first to report the news. American Soccer Now was the first to report the news. The 18 players named on the U.S. women's Olympic team on Wednesday will receive their full bonus under the CBA. It's a $10,000 per game appearance fee, plus an additional $12,000 for each win, and then $4,000 for each tie, and then the four-time Olympic champions women would earn a $36,000 bonus for winning the gold medal, $24,000 for silver, $8,000 for bronze. So, with that being said, not a bad deal. If they win, I think it's 6 games up to the championship. That would be 144 or 42,000 for just getting to the championship. And then another 36,000, so almost 200,000 for winning the championship for each player, which isn't millions. It isn't this, what we throw at, baseball players that play for the Dodgers or whatever. But it is, it's quite a bit of money. 200,000 for, a month. Then they get paid in their league. It's not a ton. I'm not gonna lie to you and say, oh, they're getting paid great money. They're it's a startup league. It's a startup sport, kind of. And unfortunately, they don't garner as much representation as even like the MLS, which is a startup sport in the US, that, as you get building and stuff, because people aren't coming to see it. People in the beginning didn't want to come see the MLS because it's not the best players in the world. And as much as you want to say these are the best women in the world, and that's true, they still aren't the best team in the world. They're not the best players in the world. There are men that are faster and stronger and quicker and whatever, and not that that's, I'm not arguing any of whether, it's just, it's hard for them to get the advertising dollars to bring in the money to get people to come watch the games, because of that. And that's just unfortunately the facts on it. So, the 18 players named to the U.S. Oh no, per the CBA, the money would go into a pool to be shared with members of the men's team, of the men's senior team. Similarly, the appearance and prize money to the U.S. men's national team receives the CONCACAF Gold Cup are split down the middle. A portion of the funds the men will take home for this summer's outgoing Copa America will also be shared with the women's players. But because the senior men's team doesn't compete at the Olympics, the men's soccer tournament is contested by under 23s, with each nation allowed to include 3 overage players. The U.S. soccer is not bound by those terms. So basically, because they don't play the first team, they're not bound by it. Are bound by the CBA to have to pay the first, they have to pay the first team half of whatever. So, although the women's team will get their full deal because it is the full team, the men's team, because they play the under 23s, they won't get paid. So, luckily they're all luckily they're all professionals. They all still get them, and they're still making good money playing. It's tough when, and this is part of what I was getting to, is that CBA that was supposed to make it equal rights for the women isn't going to help the women get paid a ton more. It's going to hurt the men's team, and whether that's rightfully so, but you shouldn't, there shouldn't be a vindictive side of this. It's not like you should be hurting the men's team because they've been paid so much more for so many years. No, if you wanted to help the women's team, you set them on a course to make more money than the men, without the men having to lose facts or lose face. Because the one thing that we're walking into here now also is that the U.S. men's team has just let go of their coach. The CBA also says that whatever they pay the men's manager, men's coach, they have to pay the women's coach. And so what they're looking at, and that was probably one of the reasons why, coming into this into this 2 years with Berhalter, that they kept him on, because they could pay him a lower rate closer to what the women's deal, because he came out of Columbus Crew, which isn't bad. I mean, they're a good team, and they pay okay. They're not the top end team. They're not paying him some millions and millions of dollars. They're paying him, I mean, I'm sure he makes a couple $1,000,000 as a manager, or as a boss of a team. And so he gets in the U.S. national team. He gets paid some more, he gets a pay raise, but I'm sure it's not that they're not paying him $10 or $15 million a year, or $20 million a year, like they would have if they go after somebody big like Jurgen Klopp or somebody like that, who, honestly, it would be interesting to see what somebody like that could do with the U.S. national team that has the quality that we have now. Because we do have decent quality. We always seem to lack that just fighting spirit, and we've never lacked that. When we had, the 2012s, 2014s, 2000, when we were going through the World Cup back in the day from 96 on, we had the heart. We just didn't have the talent, all of the talent on the field. We didn't have the fast guy. We didn't have those guys that played in Europe and just instinctively were able to pass the ball as instinctively as your Lionel Messi's or your Cristiano Ronaldo's. Because honestly, that's the difference between the guys that we make because they're big, they're strong, they're fast. They just don't have the instinct. It's not the instinctual pass. It's some of these guys, Lionel Messi and that grew up in the poor areas of Argentina or wherever, and they grew up playing bigger, taller, faster guys, and they had to learn an instinctual way to to get the ball out and to get to kick the ball. And so, if you don't have to think about where the ball's going to go or what, you just do, you're going to be faster than a guy he's dribbling down and he has to look over his shoulder and he has to go, and then he has to think about passing and think about setting his foot and kicking the ball and stuff like that. And so that's, we create that in basketball and baseball and football, American football. And we don't create that in soccer as much because, for one, we have leagues where we train kids to do all of this stuff, and they just don't get to the point where they're playing at a higher level than they should be until they get to Europe. And at that point, you're playing at a higher level than you should be, and it's noticeable. If you play at a higher level than you should be as a kid, you either adapt or you get kicked off the field. And most kids try to adapt because they want to play, and it's the love of the game. By the time you get to, your 20, 23, 24, which is prime age, if you're in Europe, you should be hitting your prime at 23, 24. You should be, like I said, hitting your prime. If you go to Europe after college, you're 24, 23, 22 at the lowest. I mean, you're just like kicked out 3 years, 4 years of college, and you're 22. And at that point, if you're not, one of the best players in the country coming out of college, you're probably not going to Europe. And if you are, you're going to play in third league. You're going to play in a lower league, and if you can excel there, you got some late bloomers and stuff like that 25, 26 they get up. But if you can start to excel, then you got something. But it's instinctual. That's the difference between that. Because it's so tight. The U.S. national team is ranked 11th. Well, what's the difference between 11th and the first place team or the second team who's fighting for championships every year? It's instincts. It's having 11 instinctual players on the team. 11 players that can play with speed and pace and not think about, do I pass now? Should I pass now? What's the tactics on the field? They get told the tactics and then they go and do. And there's no thinking about, this is what we do. That's what we do. So, but now with the, with this whole collective bargaining agreement that we have to, be fair, pay equal pay, whether that person warrants it or not. It's not fair, for one. And for two, but it doesn't keep the men, it holds back one to give the other one something. But like we just read, they're not paying them a ton. It was groundbreaking collective bargaining agreement. They're going to make $200,000 to play in the Olympics. And this is the team. This is the big team. This is the women's national team, This isn't the U20 team. They don't do the U23s for the women. They do they do the best team. And so, which is fine. Fine that they do their best team and we don't for some reason. I don't know why the men don't do that, other than the fact that FIFA has always wanted to hamper the Olympics over the World Cup, which honestly they have an opportunity that they could run a World Cup basically every 2 years. But it's all about power. It's all about money. The World Cup is the World Cup, and if you make it every 2 years instead of every 4 years, it's not as exciting. It's not as, I don't know. I still think thousands and hundreds of thousands of people would still show up. I'm already starting to save up for the 2026 World Cup here in the U.S., so that I can go to some games and be part of the historic World Cup, whether that really matters, whether, it's not in the grand scheme of things, it's just an entertainment piece and, whatever, but, I like it and eventually, and so I'm going to, I'm going to do that, but at the same time, I understand that, in the grand scheme of things of life, sports aren't the end all be all. And so, but with this, trying to be fair, trying to, fair isn't fair unless you feel like it's fair. Think about that. If you feel like it's fair, then it's probably not fair to the other person across the street that you're holding, that you're holding back. If you think it's fair, then it's probably unfair to somebody else. And you're getting whatever hand up that you're getting. So, but they're basically saying that because, it would cost them about $20 million to get somebody like Jurgen Klopp or there was a couple others that most likely they wouldn't even offer him because then they'd have to pay the women's national team manager the same. And as good as she is, paying $40 million for two national teams that only the one national team garners the respect and support. I mean, the women's national team brings in some money, but they don't. I don't know. They don't have sponsorships like the men's. The tournaments aren't followed as much as the men's, and it's just sometimes it becomes a political outpost, and people don't always want that. People don't always want to follow that. I honestly haven't followed the women too much over the last 2 or 3 years, mainly because of that, because because of this, the equal rights collective bargaining agreement, which wasn't equal rights. It's now just that we're going to make it even. And they take whatever the men are making, they have it, and they split it down the middle to the women. And so it's not, it's not equal. It's the fact that the men now split theirs in half. Which is fine if that's what they wanted to do. But they're not getting the option to do that. That's just what they have to do. So but so anyhow, let's look over, see if we can find anything else. Otherwise, I think that's kind of our podcast for the week. Um, Paramount Global is merging with Skydance Media. It's $28 billion conglomeration. Once the merger is complete, Skydance CEO is purchasing the controlling stake in Paramount, which means that Paramount will become a new company under Skydance, really. But he's the Ellison. The CEO is the son of Oracle founder Larry Ellison. And it will replace the trio of CEOs who have run Paramount since April, when failed talks with Skydance led to the ouster of the first one, CEO. The deal is to be finalized next year, pending regulatory approval. Obviously, they've got to make sure that they're not getting a monopoly. The deal comes after months of back and forth. So, Skydance, as well as other potential buyers, including Warner Brothers, Discovery. While Paramount is one of Hollywood's oldest studios, its streaming service has struggled to find an audience. And the company has lost $17 billion. Honestly, they do okay with soccer, but they don't have a big company in soccer. They follow the Italian league. I think they follow sometimes Argentinian league, and then they have like one of like the UEFA Champions League, which is big. But I don't know that it's quite as followed. They do have their own full on soccer network, which is interesting. They've kind of struggled to figure out the identity of their shows. So some of them to me have been kind of hokey, but anytime you try too hard to be too something every day, that's why we don't do this podcast every day. Sometimes we have the we just don't do it. And like today, it's just me. I had a little bit of information. I had some things lined up, and so we did the podcast. If I had not had things already lined up, we probably wouldn't have done the podcast. So, in that, it's hard. It's tough to get things. I did come across one article that I had found. It was from beginning or the end of June, and it was said that finding a job is getting tougher as AI and fake openings muddy the hunt. So I was reading this article. It's pretty interesting, and basically the premise of it is that there are a bunch of jobs out there that aren't real jobs. So there's a bunch of openings that people say that they loaded, but they're not real jobs. So basically they had just said that this was when the Labor Department said 1.84 million people filed continuing claims in the weeks ending July or June 15th. While economists say we shouldn't overanalyze weekly claim numbers, the uptick could be one of several signs that finding a job is getting harder. So they basically were saying that there are a lot of jobs that, because AI grabs the companies that are listing them, like ZipRecruiter and all of those, and there's other companies that use AI to pick up lists of jobs. So they're picking up lists of these jobs, and half the jobs on there aren't real anymore, or are no longer valid, or they AI creates a job listing like the one. So, yeah. So they said that that can lead to it. We're no longer in the 3% unemployment. We hit 4% in May, eclipsing the 3% range for the first time in 27 months. Which this has really been the longest streak since the 60s that we've been around that 3%. Job postings hit a 3-year low. So that means even the posting level, like how many jobs are being posted, is getting lower. And the labor market is still relatively hot, but it appears to be starting to cool down a little bit. Gen Z Blues, nearly 8% of 20 to 24-year-olds were unemployed in May, and that's up to 6.3% to a year earlier. That's the biggest leap in 14 years. Only 13% of your entry-level applicants have found work so far this year, and that's down 20% from 2 years ago. So basically, they're saying that as they're leaving college, as they're finally leaving college, around 20 whatever to 24, they're going straight into unemployment, or they're being unemployed, and that's they're unemployed at a rate of 8%. What you think about if you got a million people coming through that are unemployed at 8%? That's 80,000 people that are not employed, coming into the workforce. Another 80,000. So you're dropping, and that's another 80,000 people that aren't employed. That's you're dropping in 920,000 people into the workforce at a million people. And maybe it's not that many, maybe it's less, but for the sake of it, even if it's 100,000 people, 8,000 people are now dropping out of the workforce, are now unemployed, looking for the job. So in this, you're cycling, less and less jobs. And they're saying that there's less jobs out there. So, and then they're saying only 13% of the entry-level applicants have found work. So that's supposed to be a low, a pretty high number also, or a low number for entry-level applicants. So, which is why I've always said, if you go to college, learn whatever you got to learn, but make sure that you're learning something like that's in a field that actually has jobs coming, that there's actually a job for you, or that you can start your own thing, majoring in something like political science, or, any of the theoretical sciences, unless you're going to be a teacher, unless you're going to, whatever, be a political analyst. You kind of end up falling into the same level as honestly, I did after a while. Yes, I can always go back to restaurants and become, be a cook, a line cook or whatever, and my skills will be whatever they are. But if I wanted to jump into something, from other careers that I've been into, I've been into buying and selling antiques and collectibles, and been a expert in memorabilia and pricing and things of that nature, I've either got to find an auction house that wants me to help them curate pricing and stuff like that, or I've got to go into. So my expertise, for one, if an auction house has one or two guys like me at all, like if they employ even one or two guys like me, that's crazy. Or that's a higher end auction house. And if they, most of the time when they employ that person is the owner. He's the auctioneer, or he's the person who's finding all of the items to sell, and the auctioneer is, they hire that person. And so that's one of the biggest things I see, is that, we're not being realistic. Like, just because they have a degree in LARPing, then that doesn't mean you should get a degree in that. Just because they have a degree in systems, I don't know, in, political systems and advertising, even if it was political advertising, that doesn't get you, like how many people are actually doing that kind of thing. If you were in a even if you were in a communications broadcasting, there are more of those, but unless you're doing your own thing, you know, make sure you're getting a degree that you can actually use. And I've been telling kids also is, maybe you minor in something that is more technical, like let's minor in electrical sciences or electric, or, in a skill, maybe learn a skill, maybe take a year off from going to college and go learn a technical trade, for a year. And then you've got something to fall back on if your business degree doesn't take you into the executive business realm. Um, if your business degree ends up getting you the greeter position at Walmart, then you've got, then you can say, okay, well, I do have these skills in electrical, or I have these skills in, concrete. And then I can do something that's worthwhile, or that I can do something that pays worthwhile, in those things. So one of the big things I also took away was that recruiters were posting jobs that they had no. Yeah, it said nearly 40% of hiring managers recently surveyed by Resume Builder said that they've posted fake job listings in the past year, which definitely would, would be able to sway figures of job openings, would actually add to it. And if that's the case, 40% of hiring managers, if that's an actual, you think about it, even if that's a 20% number across the board of hiring numbers, that'd be 20 to 30% of the 20 to 25% of the jobs out there that they think are real, that they say are out there, are not real jobs. That's a huge number. If they're saying that there are millions of jobs out there, and 20% or 25% is millions of not jobs out there. Yeah, they say 85% of the managers who post ghost jobs said they've interviewed candidates for roles they didn't plan to hire for. And then AI tools used to speed up hiring, applying have created job board bot battle. And then basically creating a bunch of job boards and jobs that they're not really hiring for. And so if you've been, I guess this comes down to it. If you've been interviewed, and kind of like me, you've been interviewed a few times and you aren't getting jobs and you're not, just take solace in the fact that some of these jobs aren't real. Even if you got an interview, they never planned on hiring anybody for this job. So it's just one of those deals where it's like, January recruiters reviewed about 70% more applicants than last year. So a lot of companies, a lot of recruiters are out there just reviewing applicants and don't have jobs to put those applicants in. And sometimes it's just so that they can, for one, keep their job, or for two, that they can keep a kind of an eye or a hand on the pulse of what's going on, who's out there, whether they have the ability to get quality candidates for their certain job and stuff like that. And sometimes it's a deal where they're looking to see if they can get a quality replacement for X, Y, and Z. You don't want to replace that person or that group of people until you have a solid group of people that you could replace them with. So it's not all vindictive or not all just trying to mess up the day, but it also does make the numbers look a little skewed. It makes the picture look a little bit better. It helps, honestly helps the investment boards and stuff that you're still hiring. That's so many thousands of jobs. Kind of deceitful, but at the same time, it's not always that case. So get on whyimangry.com, get some of our merchandise, get some of, get your subscriptions on there, support us. Send me emails at whyimangry or whyimangrypodcast.com gmail.com to send me any information, any questions you have. If you have an article that you want us to go over or anything like that, let me know, and we'll definitely do that. And just, remember to follow, like, and share the Why I'm Angry podcast across all social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcast. The Why I'm Angry podcast ends now.